In the middle of one of the hottest, driest places on Earth, there's a dry lakebed where rocks weighing hundreds of pounds move on their own. Nobody drags them. Nobody pushes them. And for over 60 years, not a single person ever witnessed it happening. Scientists tried to explain it with wind, with magnetism, even with aliens. Every theory failed. Today, I'm telling you the complete story, the mystery, every theory that collapsed, the investigation that almost failed completely, and the exact moment researchers finally caught it happening, live, on camera. Stick around, because the actual explanation is stranger and simpler than anything anyone guessed for 6 decades. Let's get into it. This is Racetrack Playa, a dry lakebed inside Death Valley, California, one of the hottest, driest places on the entire planet. Summer temperatures here regularly cross 120 degrees. It almost never rains. And yet, scattered across this flat, cracked plain, are dozens of heavy rocks, some weighing over 600 pounds, each one dragging a long, curved trail behind it in the hardened mud. These aren't small pebbles. Some of these trails stretch hundreds of feet. And here's what made this so unsettling to the people who first documented it in the early 1900s. There was no explanation anywhere in sight. No footprints, no tire tracks, no rope marks, no machinery, just a heavy rock and a long scar in the earth behind it, like something invisible had dragged it across the desert floor. Local ranchers and prospectors had quietly noticed these moving rocks for decades before scientists ever got seriously involved. It became a strange, half-believed local legend, the kind of story you'd hear around a campfire and not fully trust. But as more people visited the valley and photographed the same rocks in different positions over months and years, it became undeniable. These rocks really were moving. Something, somehow, was making that happen. And whatever it wasn't obvious. Once scientists took a serious interest, the theories started piling up. And honestly, some of them sound almost absurd in hindsight. The first and most obvious guess was wind. Death Valley can get intense windstorms, and some researchers proposed that powerful enough gusts might be strong enough to slide these rocks across smooth ground. But there was a problem. Some of the heaviest rocks, over 600 pounds, would have required wind speeds far beyond anything ever recorded in the area. And if wind alone were the answer, you'd expect the rocks to move in fairly straight lines. Instead, many of these trails curved, looped, and even changed direction entirely, behavior far too complex for wind alone to explain. Next came magnetism. A few researchers speculated that unusual magnetic fields beneath the lakebed might be quietly pulling the rocks along. This theory gained some public attention, but scientific testing found no unusual magnetic activity in the area whatsoever. It was an interesting idea, but it didn't hold up. Then there were the more colorful theories. Some locals were convinced pranksters were sneaking into the remote valley at night, dragging the rocks with ropes or vehicles as an elaborate joke. But investigators found zero physical evidence of this. No tire tracks, no rope fibers, nothing disturbed anywhere near the trails. Committing to that kind of prank, repeatedly, over decades, without ever once leaving a trace, seemed almost as unlikely as the mystery itself. And yes, a small number of theories even ventured into aliens and unexplained supernatural forces. Predictably, none of those held up to any scrutiny either. Every serious theory researchers tested, one by one, fell apart, and that left scientists with an uncomfortable realization. To actually understand this mystery, they weren't going to solve it with guesswork. They were going to have to catch it happening. In the early 2010s, a research team led by planetary scientist Ralph Lorenz and his colleagues decided to take a different approach entirely, stop theorizing, and start gathering direct evidence. They fitted several rocks on the playa with GPS trackers precise enough to detect even the smallest movement. Alongside that, they set up weatherproof time-lapse cameras aimed continuously at the lakebed, running day and night, rain or shine. Although in this location, rain was rare enough to almost be a non-factor. Here's what made this genuinely difficult. Nobody knew how often these rocks actually moved. It could be once a year. It could be once every several years. The team had no guarantee their equipment would capture anything meaningful during the entire length of the study. Months passed. The desert stayed exactly as still and silent as it always had. No significant movement, no dramatic data, just an empty, patient waiting game in one of the most inhospitable environments in North America. For a project built entirely around catching a rare event on camera, that kind of prolonged silence is exactly the outcome researchers feared most. But they kept the equipment running anyway, because the alternative, packing up and giving up, meant walking away from a 60-year-old mystery with nothing to show for it. Then, on a freezing morning in December 2013, everything changed. Researchers arrived at the Playa and immediately noticed something different. Overnight, temperatures had dropped low enough for a thin sheet of ice to form across sections of the lakebed. As the morning sun rose and temperatures climbed, that ice began to crack apart into large, thin, flat panels. And that's when it happened. A light breeze, nowhere near strong enough to move a boulder on its own, pushed against these floating ice panels. Since some of the heavy rocks were partially trapped inside these thin ice sheets, the ice effectively acted as a sail, catching just enough wind resistance to slide the embedded rocks slowly across a thin layer of meltwater beneath them. The GPS trackers picked it up instantly. The rocks were moving, in real time, at a slow, steady pace, carving fresh trails into the soft mud beneath the melting ice, exactly matching the pattern of trails researchers had been documenting for decades. After 60 years of failed theories, the team had finally witnessed it directly. Not a supernatural event, not a hoax, just a rare, specific combination of overnight ice, morning sunlight, and light wind, working together in a way almost nobody had ever been in the right place at the right time to see. Here's the complete picture. Once all the pieces came together, on rare winter nights, Racetrack Playa can accumulate enough rainfall or moisture to form shallow puddles across the lakebed. If temperatures drop far enough overnight, that shallow water freezes into thin ice sheets. As morning sunlight warms the surface, that ice begins to crack into large, thin panels thin enough to float freely on the layer of meltwater still trapped underneath them. If a rock happens to be partially embedded in one of these floating ice sheets, even a very light wind is enough to push the entire panel, and the rock along with it, sliding smoothly and silently across the mud below. No footprints, no tire tracks, no mysterious force, just ice acting like a sail, on a surface with almost zero friction, on a morning rare enough that scientists needed years of continuous surveillance just to catch it happening once. 60 years of theories, wind, magnetism, pranksters, even aliens, were all eventually replaced by a combination of ice, water, and wind so specific that it only needed to happen once, on camera, to finally settle the debate for good. So that's the full story of the Sailing Stones of Death Valley, a mystery that puzzled scientists, tourists, and locals for over 6 decades, ultimately solved not by some dramatic breakthrough, but by patience, the right equipment, and being in the right place at exactly the right moment. It's a reminder that some of the strangest things in the world aren't supernatural at all. They're just rare enough that almost nobody's ever around to see the simple explanation happen in real time. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit subscribe, because I cover a brand new unsolved mystery every single week. And trust me, the world has no shortage of strange places still waiting for their own explanation. See you in the next one.